All right, we're going to take a look at example A, and it asks us to use the 6 steps, and those 6 steps are the 6 steps found on the top right of the previous slide in that green rectangle, and we're going to be referencing those 6 steps to compute Kyle Abrams' withholding. So we need the actual figure from the previous objective. I believe that was figure 10.2, and a part of that figure, we have Kyle Abrams' earnings amounts and deductions, and so we actually need parts of this information from this table here, this figure, and to determine the information needed to determine the withholdings. So you'll see that as we go through the 6 steps. All right, so and also the information given up here. This is figure 10.3. This is part of figure 10.4 below. This is all figure 10.3, and we'll be using this on one of the steps. And then this is figure 10.4. This is the main thing we're using, and this can get a little complicated. So I'll break that down of how to use this. And this is only part of figure 10.4. There are different tables based on if you're married or single, and if you're being paid weekly, bi-weekly, monthly. So there's a lot more to figure 10.4. This is just the weekly married table. So if you're being paid weekly and you are married. So, and as you can see, Kyle Abram, the reason we have the married is because he is married. And so, and this is a week earning. So as you can see, he's working 40 regular hours, 3 overtime. So yeah, as you can see, this is clearly just 1 week's earning. So let's go ahead and take a look at this, and let's start out with step 1. So step 1. Step 1, we're looking at determining the employee's, Kyle Abrams' gross earnings. And the gross earnings from this table right here is given right here. So we have gross earnings. That's equal to $756.50. All right, now we're going into step 2. Step 2 is dealing with the allowances. Step 2, we have, it says to multiply the appropriate weekly or monthly one withholding allowance. And so the one withholding allowance is figure 10.3. And as we can see, he's paid on a weekly basis, so we're using this first row. So we're going to take the $76 that's given in this table for weekly, and this is based off of one withholding allowance. We need to multiply that by the number of allowances that Kyle Abram is claiming. So as you can see, that's given in this table right here. And so he has 4 withholding allowances. So keep in mind that in your homework, it's not going to specifically tell you he has 4 allowances. It'll say something like, and just to know where this comes from, you may be familiar with a W-4 if you worked for someone before. You may have filled out a W-4, and in the W-4 you have to mention how many allowances you have, and you have to, say why you're claiming the allowances in the W-4, and it could be based on how many children you have, or it could be based off of you being married and claiming your spouse, or you could also claim yourself. So and it'll be breaking it down like that in your homework. It'll say something like you're married and you're claiming yourself, and you have 2 children, and so you're claiming allowances for each. So then you'll have to determine that's 4. So that might be what Kyle Abram has, and I'm just speculating. He's married, and so I'm thinking the other 2 may be from having children. But anyways, keep that in mind for your homework. So 76 times 4 is 304. So he's $304 from withholding allowances. And then we go into step 3. Step 3 is just having us take that amount that we found from step 2 and subtracting that from our gross earnings. So we're going to take $756.50 minus $304. Now, and I want to make a connection with your W-4. You may know this if you've dealt with W-4s before. If you don't know this, it's okay. So realize that the more allowances you have, the less money they're going to take out of your, the more allowances you have, the less money they're taking from your paycheck. So the more money you're getting back if you have more allowances. The less allowances you have, the more they're going to be taking out of your paycheck. And you can see this in step 3. We have a smaller amount here. And I'm going to put a rectangle around this number because this is an important number we're going to be dealing with now in blue. So realize that if we had less allowances, we would have a larger amount here. And this amount determines how much we're going to be using this in figure 10.4 in the next step. So we'll write down step 4. Step 4 has us looking at the figure 10.4 and determining which tax bracket we're in, and then the amount to withhold based on the information on the right side of the chart. So let's look at that. So $452.50. We have to figure out what we're over, but not over. So in between two values. So as you can see, I kind of covered that up. But not over. Okay, so notice that 452.50 is in between 163 and 512. So we're in this first row right here, 163 to 512. So we're going to be looking at this same row. We're going to be looking at $0 plus 10%. So I'm going to look at the 452.50, the amount that we found from step 3. Now we're in step 4. We're going to subtract the amount, the excess over 163. So we're looking at the excess portion, and we're going to subtract 163. And the reason we're doing this is because everything below 163 is not being taxed at a 10% rate. So so everything below 163 is just $0 being withheld. So so it goes from 0% up to 10%, then 15, 25, and so only the portion in each of these intervals you're being taxed at those respective rates. So not all of them. If you fall under a 25% tax rate, that doesn't mean all money you're making is at 25%. Only the portion that's in that interval. So keep that in mind. So 452.50 minus 163, so that leaves us with $289.50. $289.50 that's being taxed at a 10% rate. So not all 452.50, only the part that's over 163, which is the amount that we just calculated, is being taxed at a 10% rate. So step 5, we're going to take the 289.50 and multiply that by 0.1, the 10%. And that gives us $28.95. So there's $28.95 is the amount of income tax to withhold so far. So that's the amount that's being withheld just from this interval 163 to 512. So we're going to do step 6. And step 6 is it's asking us to add the base tax amount, if there is any, shown in the table. So notice that is this column right here. All those values in that column, that's what that's referring to. We're going to add that to whatever percent we just calculated from step 5. So the percentage, the 10% is $28.95. We're going to take, now in this case we have 0 because we didn't have anything from the previous interval. So we're going to take 0 and we're going to add the 10% of the excess over 163, which is $28.95, and that gives us $28.95. So there's $28.95. So we're done now. We added that amount. I mean, it's the same value from step 5, but we need to do that step. If we fell in maybe, like, let's say the 25% tax bracket, we in this 1582 to 3025 for a week's earning, then we would take 195.40, which is the amount that we found from the previous brackets, the amount you earned, and we would add our step 5. So there may be a value. It just happens to be 0 in this case because we're in that first interval. So that's our result. Now keep in mind that that the values in figure 10.4 and even figure 10.3, those are subject to change from like an annual basis, you know, based on tax reform and changes that, you know, that's determined from, you know, Congress and the Senate. They vote on the tax reform sometimes on an annual basis, and so these values can change. The tax rates can change from year to year. So you'll notice in your homework that that you may have different tax brackets than what you'll find in all of figure 10.4 from your textbook. But the process is still the same. You just may have different numbers, different intervals, different even percentages, different values for, it may not be $76 for a weekly for one withholding allowance. They'll give you a different number possibly. So, but this process is still the same. So don't use the values that you have in this video or even from your textbook, but just follow the process we're doing in the homework. So let me know if you have any concerns. I'll be more than happy to help. And yeah, good luck.